to Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. Today's conversation promises to be an insightful one with a remarkable guest. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a regular listener, we're so glad you're here. Our goal is to bring you closer to the innovative leaders and thinkers shaping our future. And today, we are thrilled to welcome General Gary Brito. General Brito is a distinguished four-star U.S. Army leader whose 38-year career reflects exceptional strategic vision, operational excellence, and enterprise transformation at the highest levels of government. As Commanding General of U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command, a command that drove the Army's institutional engine for training, education, and development, General Brito served as the CEO responsible for preparing approximately 1 million soldiers and civilians. Previously, as the U.S. Army Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel, he served as SVP leading end-to-end human capital, readiness, and workforce policy for the entire Army. General Brito also commanded the Maneuver Center of Excellence in Fort Benning and the Joint Readiness Training Center in Fort Polk, Louisiana, two of the nation's most critical training and force generation platforms, where he drove innovation, advanced organizational agility, leader development, and operational preparation. A decorated military leader, he holds a bachelor's degree from Penn State University, a master's in human resource management from Troy State University, and completed elite executive programs including Leadership at the Peak and MIT Seminar 21. He also received Penn State University's Distinguished Alumni Award in 2025, the institution's highest honor. Well, welcome to Tipping Spears, General Brito.
Hey, thanks, Hannah. Thanks for the opportunity and definitely the warm introduction. The only caveat I'll add is I've just recently retired about 60 days ago and started trying to grow this beard since then, but I think I'll continue that. And I would add, Hannah, I was also the last commander of the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command, which may be part of what I'll talk to today. We inactivated the command on the 26th of September. Which was indeed a lot of leadership work, but it was great for the Army, and that emerged to help set up a new command, which will maintain the momentum the Army has. So thanks for the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you. Can you start us off today by telling us where your story begins?
Yeah, well, I think like many folks, I had some grandparents and uncles and grandfather and uncles and a few others that served in World War II, some relatives in Korea, Vietnam, but I actually had no desire for the military. Uh,
Wow.
my mom remarried when I was relatively young. My stepdad was in the Navy. I had no desire for the Navy. And to fast forward through that, I started Penn State at a branch campus, Altoona, Pennsylvania, and the Altoona campus, and that's where the journey started. Went by an information booth and learned about ROTC. Said, heck, I'll give it a try. It can't hurt. A little extracurricular activity. I like doing outdoor stuff. And I did, just gave it a try. Um, I was I was a non-scholarship cadet, never did get a scholarship, just kind of worked through there. And then fast forward a couple of years, I intended to do 4 years and get out. And guess that didn't happen. And we can talk about that some more, but that's where the journey started in our Army ROTC at Altoona campus, and obviously continued when I moved to the main campus. And blessed to have a 38-year successful career with great soldiers.
Wow. It's fascinating to hear how the Army wasn't your, the initial career goal. That's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So was there a particular event or person that served as a catalyst for your career?
Uh, yes and yes. I want to say yes an event and yes a person. One, and still remember him. It's been many years since I've seen him. It was an ROTC cadre member, non-commissioned officer. At the time was Sergeant First Class George Bradley. I know he ended up retiring from the Army as a command sergeant major. And I did see him about 10 years ago, obviously long after ROTC. But that was a moment of seeing, wow, this is some great
Mhm.
leadership in the Army. And what helped me all then and throughout the years was the value of a really good non-commissioned officer. So I learned that early on. So that was the person event. I mean, the person. The event, which may sound very trivial, and as I think about it now, it probably is, just happened to be then what they called advanced camp. that ROTC cadets went through. And I went through Fort Bragg, North Carolina, an Oscar company. I remember when I say the name has changed, today it's called Cadet Summer Training. They only do it at Fort Knox. But that week there, well, a couple of weeks there, the leadership bug came on. I said, I kind of like this stuff. And I like being in infantry, which I chose for my first choice. And that was the moment I said, yeah, I'm going to stick with this. Because I had no obligations yet. Non-scholarship was not contracted at that point. So after that, I was. So the event was a grade non-commissioned officer. The event, I'm sorry, was the cadet summer training. The person was a non-commissioned officer. And I would say those themes carry throughout. And to fast forward, I just like the privilege of leading soldiers of all ranks. And of course, that matures over time. Now I'll pause there.
So I know every journey, has its hurdles. Can you tell us what some of the biggest obstacles were that you faced in your career and how you overcame them?
Yeah, one of them, Hannah, which everybody serving experienced it. Actually, the whole world did. I was commanding Fort Benning, Georgia at the time, the Maneuver Center of Excellence,
Mhm.
18 to 20, and it was COVID.
Oh,
Uh, and the reason why it was so impactful is because our mission was just training.
yeah.
And that train, pardon the pun, couldn't stop. The Army had to keep
Mhm.
on going. We had to figure out how you continued Ranger School, how you continued Airborne School, what mitigations did you have to do for basic combat training and OSIT and
Mhm.
those types of things? Because the Army still had to be manned, trained,
Mhm.
and equipped. So that we had to work through that. I'm very fortunate with some great leaders and both uniformed and civilians that figured it out. Not to say we didn't have our problems. We had the COVID challenges like everybody else, but great leaders and the relationship with the community was very supportive. So a challenge in that the mission still had to get done. Uh, the other hand, and this will be a very indirect answer, and maybe one you don't want, but I will tell you, I wake up every day in service, and I do now as a civilian or private citizen, with rose-colored glasses. And how can you make a change? What difference can you make in somebody's life? And how can you just make things better or sustainable? So I try not to put the word challenge in my lexicon.
I didn't even think about how COVID, would so impact the training initiatives. You can't do Ranger School via Zoom. So,
With all the schools, it's about 50 to 70,000 soldiers of some type coming through something. And it was a lot. And as I mentioned, the most high-risk schools were there. So other than a couple of weeks POSIX, we figured it out. Great
wow.
commandants.
Yeah. So I know you led at every echelon, from platoon to four-star command. What leadership lessons stayed consistent throughout your career, and which ones changed, as you moved up the ranks and the levels of responsibility evolved?
Sure, without boring you with the big details, in one sentence, one label really, the soldier is a centerpiece. And that was something that a non-commissioned officer taught me when I was on my fifth day in my first assignment as a second lieutenant. And to quote her, he basically said, don't work for your evaluations, work for your soldiers, and everything will be okay. I did not know what they really meant back then. But as the years went on, it made sense. You've been commissioned and charged to lead that person or work with this fellow leader. And I could talk for hours on that, but it that responsibility grows at the respective echelon you're at, platoon versus battalion, and so on and so forth. But if you remember that, you'll do the right thing. You'll train hard, you'll train proper, you'll reward, you'll have discipline. You'll that soldier's a centerpiece. I would say is that I'm going to even transfer that to my second chapter in life, the person that you're working for. Technology and all is going to happen, but that person makes a difference for one. And then, and over time, um, we all mature, we all make mistakes, we all learn, and leaders in this respect. But being genuine to your word, being authentic, that carried throughout for sure. Having the humility to know, I screwed this up, or what can I learn to be better for that soldier in the centerpiece, just for illustration. And I would offer to any leader, any rank, in any position, uniformed or not, and keep that in mind, the authenticity. And lastly, and I'll close, and this really was impactful in my last job in U.S. Army Training Doctrine Command because our command was responsible to the Army for the Army profession, the training and all that met with it. Here's my point. The Army is a profession defined as an institution that has values. Yes. We have work ethic. Yes. We take an oath. Yes. You're not pushing a time card. So
Mhm.
all that is important for the Army profession. And to flip it, those which you're leading, the million plus Army, all the components, of course, from all the territories, all stations of life, male, female, doesn't matter. You have a U.S. flag and you have U.S. Army. And how can you be the most professional leader for them? And I'll stop there.
I love I love the reminder, the visual of the soldier as the centerpiece. It's a great kind of principle to ground
Yeah,
to.
thank you. And I won't take ownership of that. I had some great leaders as well, but it made sense. But it did start on that day 5 of my first unit when this non-commissioned officer said, here's what's important.
So enhancing organizational performance is something that everyone talks about. Everyone wants to do it. They think it's a good goal, but very few are good at actually accomplishing that objective. So what strategies do you use to enhance organizational performance in very large, complex organizations like, with the U.S. Army?
Yeah, I would say, Hannah, definitely I wasn't alone in that. And I bring it up for a point. Uh, I hate to say it's a team effort, but it really is. So the leader has a critical role in driving the change, driving the training, the whole bit.
Mhm,
I would offer up three simple things to look at. I won't say these are doctrine, but just lessons learned,
mhm,
especially at the large organization level.
mhm,
It can be below a 4 star, what have you.
mhm,
One, communicate. Uh, Here's my mission. Here's my vision. Not my, but our vision. Here's our mission. Here's our purpose for being what we do. And have the maturity and the transparency to relook that every now and then. So a large organization needs to assess themselves, see how I'm doing or how I'm not doing, and then have measured mechanisms in place. Yep, the measurements are looking good. I'm on track. Well, here's the objective we need to get to. I'm not on track. And don't be afraid to drive necessary change. Break. Word of caution, I would say. In driving change, and I learned this, luckily, not in a negative way, but just in an execution way in the last command.
mhm,
Even when driving change, uh, be true and stick to whatever your military term mission essential tasks are.
mhm,
These things must happen. If all else fails, A, B, and C must happen. Um, Training and Doctrine Command has been inactivated, but
mhm,
I even know the new command that's assumed the mission still will train lethal
mhm,
soldiers, still will train competent leaders. Those things are going to happen. Recruiting is still going to happen, even though some additional change may happen. And I want to go back to the communications piece and the teamwork. The leader has to drive change with his or her organization. And I'm not saying he or she's doing it by themselves. Quite frankly, they can't. So they have
mhm,
to get a good guidance, good time management principles, resources, maneuver space for things to
mhm,
take place, and then continually reassess and see how I'm doing. Um, if you resist, and another thing I learned in the last time, and I would say this would apply to corporate world as well, resisting change will make you irrelevant,
mhm.
and you probably won't exist after a while. So those things have to happen. The environment changes, good, bad, or ugly. I don't know if I got exactly to your question, but those things were key in maintaining the readiness you need for any level of organization, and then driving through complexity as well.
Mhm. Oh, That's a great, gave some great action points. I'd read an article you wrote, I think last week on LinkedIn, describing change as an opportunity rather than a burden. And that
Yes.
just really stood out to me, and kind of your description of, these organizations, if they don't change, and I think all of us have some level of like, I think it's kind of the human condition to have some level of change resistance. Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like certainty, but your statement, change is an opportunity rather than a burden, really resonated with me, because I think that's such a good perspective in a world that is constantly changing, and it's so complex. And
Yeah. Well, thanks. Well, thanks for reading that. Also, I got to write another one. I want to. But when you say constantly changing and rapidly as well,
Mhm,
the speed of technology, um, there's really no global borders when it comes to information and technology and communication. Now it's instant. So that impacts things as well. So that needs to be thought about. And obviously, applying it to making sure an Army's combat radio unit's different than it may be a corporation, the principles
mhm,
are the same. And
mhm,
Hannah, if I may uh, add one piece to that last question, and again, self-reflection, lesson learned, which in this case was a good thing. I mentioned the leader will only be effective as he or she drives the organization. But also, when faced with complexity or need to change, the leader needs
mhm,
to be authentic, embrace it. If you want to have a little self-reflection, go in your office and have it. But when you get to work, you get to work. And so that level of cooperation and acceptance of where we need to go starts with the guy or girl that has the mantle to get it done.
mhm.
Thanks.
So now you oversaw, manpower, personnel, and talent management as the Army G1. Can you tell us kind of what the biggest talent management challenges facing the Army are, and what organizations can learn from how the Army approaches people?
Well, certainly, Anna. And I would, yes, and I'm going to tie it to a conversation about 30 seconds ago on the world moving quickly and technology
Yeah.
advancing. For one, while serving in that position, it was a first Pentagon experience. So that alone was gee, I got a learning curve here. But had a great organization to make things happen. To
Mhm,
fast forward and hopefully get to your question, in the scope of people with
mhm,
talent management, I'm not going to get into personal policies and all, but in the scope
mhm,
of people, talent management, I think the organizations at every echelon, to include the Army G1 and the institution as a whole, just be very aware of the environment we have. And when I say
mhm,
environment, where young men and women are today, where young leaders are today, learn differently, receive information differently, have different wants. I know many say the generation A, Z, it doesn't matter. They're going to join the army, and the culture that you need to make a combat ready soldier, regardless of their MOS. So just an awareness of the agility the organization must have, perhaps have, changes that we may need to make in training, changes in how
mhm,
we do talent management. And I'm very proud of where the Army's going on that. Just looking at special training for data literacy and artificial
mhm.
intelligence, but yet you still have someone that can drive and shoot out of a tank. So all of that needs to be looked at. And I kind of addressed this earlier. You assess yourself, relook the objectives if necessary. So just a present day talent management and HR approach.
Mhm,
And it's going very much in a positive direction. And
mhm,
lastly, on that question, there's levels of technology that can help you do that as well. Like I know there's a new software system that's helping us manage this million-person army today. Uh, and organizations have to go through the same. So an awareness of
mhm.
how to manage talent, recruit talent, retain talent of all ranks. And I'm very pleased, well, not that I need to be pleased at all, but the organization is definitely going that way. And I'm sure it applies to the corporate world as well. Did that answer your question?
It did. It did. That's very encouraging. Thank you.
I mentioned the rose-colored glasses. You can get anything done with a positive attitude. So,
I like that.
Mhm.
So you were commanding general of TRADOC at a very historic time in the command's kind of history. In this position, you shaped training, education, leader development for the entire Army. Can you tell us what elements or capabilities you think are most essential to prepare soldiers for future wars?
Yes, I will take risk of publicly quoting the Sergeant Major of the Army, but being brilliant at the basics, brilliant at the basics. And then before I heard that, I shared with the team upon assuming command, we
Mhm.
must master the basics. I want to
Mhm.
explain. Uh, a new 18-year-old private coming in, a 21-year-old second lieutenant coming in,
Mhm.
he or she will come back at some point and go through some other training, some other schooling,
Mhm.
some other professional education. So mastering the basics at the respective echelon is a must. And let me connect it to innovation and other things.
Mhm.
So a second lieutenant signal officer masters the basics of his or her specialty. So when they come back to get some advanced artificial intelligence training, they have the basics. When they go back to the Army War College, they have two levels of education. So it's really a continuity of professional learning. Same for the soldier through the professional training. Same for the Army civilians, which we had some
Mhm.
oversight of that as well. So that would get to the basic strategy. I probably broadened the answer more than you wanted to, but I start with that. And I'll take ownership of this term because I made it up, didn't make it up, but I shared it with the unit. The first layer of bricks for
Mhm.
combat readiness was the responsibility of the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command.
Mhm.
And if you don't have that first layer, you can't put the second layer, third layer, fourth layer. So you
Mhm.
see where I'm going in arm signals. If you don't have that first layer, the soldier, the lieutenant won't be the sergeant or the sergeant first class or the captain, so on and so forth. And with that, Hannah, the handoff to the operational force, forces command, USASOC, whoever, you've given them what they need to train at the collective level. I hope all that, I know it sinks in, and it can get better when you leverage technology, when you're well aware of your threat also. We learned
Mhm.
things in Ukraine. How does that get weaved in? But weaved into that framework that I mentioned of the
Mhm.
basic, the first layer, and then it gets better at every echelon, every echelon. Does that make sense? I hope.
It does. It's a great visual of the importance of that foundation. I think too many people, they're like, oh, it's just the basics. I want to skip to something, bigger or
Yeah.
more. And it starts to crack up, right? Like a house kind of
Yep.
built on sand. There's no,
Yep.
there's no solid foundation. So I love that visual and how it really builds on each other.
And you definitely had to do it with those that you're providing, the unit, and it's reinforced at every level. And if I may add one thing, also, Hannah, people are people, and not to overuse that term, but there was some other levels of training that were as important. How are you professional?
Mhm.
How do you treat each other with dignity and respect? All that was key and infused into the training. And part of that was to ensure you train the trainer. The cadre
Mhm.
and others had just as much responsibility. And that was the ownership from the top down to the command, and had some great teammates that made it happen. And I'll
Yeah.
stop.
So you oversaw some of the Army's largest systematic modernization efforts. What does effective change management look like in an institution that's, one is large, but also, has so much history. It's tradition bound. It's not a new entity like the U.S. Army. Can you kind of tell us what, change management kind of how you approach it in that environment?
Sure. And I'll use my opening and that being the last commander and just as a scene
Mm.
setter, where the Army had established initiatives for transformation. I'll put it that way.
Mhm.
About a year ago,
Mhm.
maybe a little less than a year, maybe about roughly 9 months ago. and some clear guidance or trajectory on where it's going, and continuing to go as I speak.
Yeah.
Um, so the complex transformation you spoke to was not just the responsibility of training command. I had a big piece of it,
Mhm.
as did my counterpart, who commanded Army Futures Command, and both of us merged together to stand up a new command that is existing today,
Mhm.
Army Transformation and Training Command. Now, the capabilities within our two organizations merged into this one to make it better and meet the demands of the transformation initiatives. That's the back it up and answer your question. Um, an understanding, and I would recommend anybody, corporate world as well, and I hope to have this challenge in the future,
Mhm.
is if you have an hour, spend 75% of your time understanding the problem. I mean, understanding very clearly where you need to go. And then when the problem's understood, what's the way we're going to fix it? How are we going to solve this problem? Courses of action, objectives, just broadly speaking. So the path to get there. And then throughout, communicate, organize yourself for success, whether it's a person, a systems, or both, or people, systems, or both, and it's all of it. Assess throughout. And lastly, Hannah, I would say, even with that strategy, uh, the leader has to drive it. The leader has to make the assessments. The leader has to manage the risk. At the big,
Mhm.
you've asked at the high level, that's a high level.
Mhm.
And have some benchmarks throughout to measure your success, to measure your progress is a better way to put it.
Mhm.
So that you meet what I'll call the delivery date.
Yeah.
Or you're not. And if you're not, what adjustments need to be made?
Mhm.
So to your point, at the Army command level, the fourth draw level wasn't alone in this. So it was a big transformative effort, actions that required communication, transparency, a coalition of the willing, my word, because if they
Mhm.
weren't, they were not going to help. Just you got to go. And I did use you help drive change, and you drive home. I'll own that
Yeah.
one as well, because it had to happen for all the right reasons. And before I get too geeky on you, I'll stop there to see if it gets a bit. Communication, transparency, understand the problem very clearly. And the last thing I'll add, Hannah, a technique that many do it, is the ability to see what might not be going well. Red team yourself,
Mhm.
a good team or something that looks at it from the other side of the football field and says, okay, well, this is what you think is going to happen, but this is how it's happening. And that allows you to get to your objectives as well. And then if you see resources, whether it's money, more personnel, or something that's necessary, then you have a valid reason to go to hire and say, okay, in order to make this work, here's what we need.
Mhm.
And I'll stop there.
I love how you broke down basically kind of a framework for
Yes.
tackling a change. And I think that's something, as you mentioned, 70% of your time, if you have an hour, in understanding the problem. I think that's something folks tend to have like an aversion to. It's like, oh, I don't want
Yeah.
to, this problem is causing me stress. I don't want to try to understand it. I just want to like throw solutions and see what will fix it. So I appreciate the
No, very
framework
fair,
that you
Hannah.
outlined.
And yeah. And I would say, for the Army, I can speak to that. I'm sure the other services, and I know the corporate world has the same.
Hmm.
We have processes and doctrine and stuff that works. You apply
Yeah.
it to this. You're not reinventing everything. There's probably not a lot of challenges someone has not gone through. So leverage that. And caution for the senior leader, don't think that only seniors can make things happen.
Mhm.
You may have a young, high-speed young officer or young non-commissioned officer will make magic and just so set the conditions for him or her to succeed. Thanks.
So when people hear the word innovation, they often like what first pops in their head is technology. But effective innovation involves more than just technology. It involves people. What conditions help, innovation flourish in an organization, and what hinders it? Especially kind of in that people category, that people component.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would offer up, and I learned this throughout my entire career. I know many did as well. There were there were new innovative pieces of technology that came out when I was a captain,
Mhm.
and it was state of the art at the time. It's not now. It's actually good dinosaurs now. But what was learned throughout time to include assignments at the training centers and just training in the field, you have to marry the kit.
Mhm.
To your point, innovation is not just stuff with those who need to be trained and those who will operate it. And it does go back to a framework and a strategy as well.
Mhm.
Um, this part of my illustration here. So I get this new phone of some type that has all these capabilities. Just putting it, hey, here, Hannah, go figure this out, or I
Mhm.
want you to go do whatever, may not be the best strategy unless this kit is easy as an iPhone. You might be able to work it out, but the strategy could include, hey, new soldier or soldiers, here's the new kit. Go to the field and do a pressure test on it, or try it for me. Give some feedback to the developer. He make some tweaks on it.
Mhm.
And I'm broadly going through the new strategy that the Army has been working for some time. Soldier touch points, communication with industry partners allows you to tweak things like that to make sure the innovation is a capability,
Mhm.
improving the capability. So that's the human in the loop in some respects has to happen. So how do you leverage the capacity of this kit to make the warfighting capability better? And
Mhm.
that leader will make a training plan of some type to marry those two capabilities together. Now, you did ask about what can hamper things. Money,
Mhm.
time. Time is something we have to work with very hard, of course. But money, time, continued touch points, all of that, the training and acquisition relations worlds are working through it. And it's
Mhm.
going very well. Part of the transformation initiatives that I mentioned up front. And I'm sure that template would apply to corporate worlds and
Mhm.
challenges as well. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. I think, it's a good reminder for everyone. We don't just innovate for innovation's sake. It's got to have a purpose and be able to, have value there in the field. And I love how you kind of outline that process of, the kit and the feedback and tying it into the objectives. It's not just so we have a really cool piece of technology that, we don't know how to use. So.
Yeah, and Hannah, if I may say, and I'm sure others have done this, but in my last 6 to 9 months, really more than that, that framework of a partnership between the institutional training,
Mhm.
brick and mortar training, the operational units, just really made the challenge not a challenge, an opportunity to communication with industry, probably to a level, positive scale that I've never seen, and it's continuing to go well.
That's great. So the emergence of new technology, so this era that we're living in now, requires organizations to adapt very, very fast. And, it's not uncommon to encounter some change resistance in the organizations. And I love how you mentioned previously the coalition of the willing. So I
Mhm.
guess kind of
My words, I'll own that one.
if we're thinking about the coalition of the unwilling here when it comes
Yeah.
to change management, what advice do you have for leaders that are facing that?
Mhm. Well, as you mentioned, because things can go so quickly
Mhm.
and innovation challenges, and how do you do that? Um, it's going to require probably some internal organizational changes as
Mm,
well to help drive that. I know many organizations stood up and will stand up innovation cells,
yeah.
could be acquisition cells where they didn't exist
Mhm.
before. Um, and then do assess the talents and desires of those that are charged with executing it, to kind of
Mhm.
prevent the unwilling piece a little bit because it's going to happen.
Mhm.
And if you run into that level of resistance, it does turn into a hard leader decision, like, thanks for your service, or go do something else, or here's something that we need you to do to help us continue the trajectory of change and innovation and transformation. Uh, Now, I'm not going to say that that doesn't exist, probably in any
Mhm.
organization, but getting it up front with transparency, communications, the leader telling, sharing I am leading this effort. We are going to
Mhm.
drive this together, and here's the why. I'll put some emphasis on that. Really helps to take this challenge and make it a true opportunity. And one thing I did learn, Hannah, and I'll stop after this, in this last command, because of this major trans
Mhm.
support to transformation that we had to go through, was explaining this is why we're doing it. And
Mhm.
something that simple. Matter of fact, the first one we had a town hall where everybody came in the conference room and I went on the stage and here's the mission, ladies and gentlemen. Here's why we're doing it. Here's what I know and here's what I don't know. Any leader can do that, offering up just the TTP, I'm sorry, technique. And
Yeah.
because it gives the why.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how that can motivate folks. Oh, I get it now, just because I didn't get it before. And then there may be some, well, we didn't do that 25 years ago, and I'm not. Well, that's going to happen.
Mhm.
And then we can talk through some other, of course, alternatives for
Mhm.
you. But that why often made a difference. No different than I learned as a second lieutenant um, on when discussing missions. I'll leave it there.
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a good reminder of the why. I think that's something that folks tend to overlook. They want to get to the how are we going to change and just forget to that first step really, which is explaining it and tying it into showing how it connects to the mission.
Hannah, you got me thinking again, though. Even when the why and the intent is clear,
Mhm.
people would go execute without having to be micromanaged, which I would not
Mhm.
recommend.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a checklist. They'll execute and give them the trust to
Mhm.
manage risk and make decisions where okay, I was supposed to turn left, but something stopped me from going left. I'm going to go right, but I'm still going to execute the mission. So the
Mhm.
intent needs to be very clear. And the leader should have the humility and the maturity to relook it every now and then and say, was I
Mhm.
clear or not? And don't have an ego if you're not.
Mhm.
Fix it.
Mhm. I like that. So I know many folks, they want to make a difference in their career. What guidance do you offer people who, feel called to a life of service, but they don't know how to start? Maybe they don't have, you know, parents that were involved in public service or military service, and they're not sure where to start. Can you share some, guidance for folks that may find themselves kind of at that point in the journey?
I can. And if that journey's in the very beginning and they don't know what they want to do,
Mhm.
just be good at what you signed up to do in the first place. So if you're
Got
going
it.
to start off as an infantry platoon leader, be a damn good infantry platoon leader. I would say the same for the soldier because the profession deserves that. And you
Mhm.
don't know if you'll be called tonight to deploy, fight, and win.
Mhm.
So that's a must. But also, it's full circle.
Mhm.
There's opportunities for mentorship.
Mhm.
That's just some more argue it is a form of leadership, but mentorship that's out there. People can seek that. Um,
Mhm.
there's other institutions like the programs within the services of the Army that can help you as well. Your branch reps can help you as well. Uh, and I would ask or challenge anyone if this isn't for you, while you have to serve honorably, and it's just
Mhm.
not for you. And then you'll be allowed to exit with just as much dignity and respect as you came in with. And that's full circle on us as well.
Mhm.
And then lastly, and shared this with officers and non-commissioned officers and civilians. Your needs may change over time, whether it's family situation, I have kids or divorced or aging parents, or I used to like this infantry stuff, I don't anymore. That wasn't my case. I loved it to the end. But there's other opportunities as well. This is not a recruiting pitch, but we have close to 200 specialties that a soldier can serve in, and branch-wise, a lot that an officer can serve in. So if you want to go to grad school, the opportunity might be there. You want to transition to be an acquisition person, the
Mhm.
opportunities are there. It's a big institution with many opportunities for folks. I would explore those to include the benefits that come with it
Mhm.
before making a hasty decision. And us guys, girls on the other side, the more senior one who's in it needs to provide that opportunity, counseling, professional development sessions that may help. But again, um, if you look at it, the full circle of my words, the ecosystem,
Mhm.
the soldier who comes in who may get out content that they served is also your best ambassador for that other
That's
person
true.
who want to come in the army. And we need, and we have a damn good service. All the services are, but we're going to need it as well. So it's really full circle.
And
Thanks.
true, true soldier for life there.
That's one way to look at it. Soldier of all rank for life.
There
Yep.
you go. So what do you think, our society is lacking most right now when it comes to, leadership, values, or resilience? I know we're living in a changing world, lots of uncertainty, but what is it that's on your radar that you feel like we're missing?
I won't say only my radar. It's no secret that all the services and all are doing much, much better now.
Yeah.
The Army had a bigger challenge because it's bigger and recruiting a
Hmm.
couple years ago, but it was off the chart success and because they have a good leader in position executing things. But with a young future service person, we have academic and fitness challenges, but I
Hmm.
know society is getting at that, for one. That's there. There's a lot of turbulence going on. We just have to deal with it, and I know we will. And perhaps we're guilty again of the rose-colored glasses, but I'm going to keep them on. So, a challenge could be fitness issues, which we'll get through. I know schools and the services are getting at it. Uh, Probably because of the 38 years that I just finished, I
Hmm.
was used to and saw a certain level of work ethic that was out
Hmm.
there. So I know that can continue as well. I know I'm not answering your question well because I try to wake up positive every day. But the fitness issues for sure. There's a lot going on in the world. You can look at the news anybody, just like I can. I'm bipartisan here, not getting political
Hmm.
whatsoever. But people can watch the news, and we just have to work through it to maintain our values as a country and a society.
Hmm.
And I'll bring it back to the military, of course. Young men and women should want to join. It's a great, great. Matter of fact, it's over the 50-year anniversary for the all volunteer army and the services, well, volunteers service, and the services will make them strong.
Hmm.
So we just need to get through that. I know I probably didn't get to your question directly, but there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be opportunities that will come out of it, and a moral compass to help drive where we need to go. Make the tough decision if you're in a leadership position, which you will. And I guess I'll close this question where it's something I mentioned in the front. You take all that challenge, bring it back to the why. That soldier's a centerpiece. You're going to do the right thing. You're gonna do your best to do the right thing. And I'll stop there.
I love that. I like the rose-colored
Thanks.
glasses,
Yeah, I won't say
Joe.
it's right all the time, but it makes me feel good. So,
That's great. So, any final words or advice or parting thoughts for the audience today?
well, I've obviously transitioned out of the military and changed ID cards a whole bit, but I personally am very, very thankful and blessed that stayed on that path.
Mhm.
Whatever it was, might not have known what it was, but just stayed on that
Mhm.
path. And I guess I'll close the value of a strong character, uh, steel moral compass, taking care of people
Mhm.
is full circle. And again, I think that just lead to anyone's positive trajectory and apply well to anyone serving in the military, which I would recommend,
Mhm.
or any corporate organization as well, which I'm hoping to soon see. And so I guess I'll close there. And I do want to flip it back to your screen and say thanks for
Mhm.
giving a platform for people to share things and have a candid discussion. And I appreciate it. And the big umbrella of leadership has so many spokes in it, and some of which we addressed today. And I'm happy to be part of this effort.
Well, thank you so much, General Brito, for taking the time to come on and share your insights, your experiences. I know your contributions to our nation have impacted so many, and I'm just so honored that you would take time out of your day to have this conversation with me. So thank you.
Well, thanks for reaching out.
And
Available
to,
anytime.
and to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. We hope this conversation has sparked new ideas and challenged the way you think about our future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll catch you next time with another exciting guest.